Rachel Morgan had never thought pregnancy would feel this exhausting, but at 7 months along, she was learning that every emotion seemed sharper, every sound louder, and every small conflict heavier than it should be. She leaned against the kitchen counter, sipping a smoothie, when the sound of soft footsteps echoed in the hallway. Tessa, her younger sister-in-law, entered in a silk robe Rachel recognized from a boutique in New York. Without so much as a good morning, Tessa sat on a bar stool, scrolling through her phone. Rachel had been trying to be patient for months. Tessa was 26, newly single, and had moved into their home, temporarily, while she found herself. That temporary stay had turned into a permanent residency. Which handbag should I invest in next? Tessa muttered to herself, tapping on her phone as if a $3,000 purse was a stock option. Rachel swallowed the urge to comment, but this morning felt different. Something inside her said it was time to speak up. Tessa, can we talk? Rachel asked, setting her smoothie down. About what? Tessa didn't look up. I think we need to cut back on spending, Rachel said carefully. Especially with the baby coming. Tessa froze, then lifted her head slowly, her eyes narrowing. Excuse me? I'm just saying, maybe the luxury orders can wait for now. We need to be mindful. Tessa laughed, loud, sharp, almost theatrical. Oh my God. You are unbelievable. Rachel frowned. What does that mean? It means you're a gold digger. That's what this is about, isn't it? Tessa's tone dripped with disdain. You married my brother for his money, and now you want to control how it's spent. Rachel's jaw tightened. That's not true. Oh, please. Everyone in the family knows you didn't have much before Ethan. Now you live in his house, drive his car, eat his food. Rachel tried to interrupt, but Tessa leaned forward, relentless. And now you think you can tell me, his own sister, how to spend. You're nothing without him. Rachel felt the words slam into her chest. She placed a protective hand over her belly. The baby kicked gently, almost like a reminder to stay calm. The front door opened, and Helen, Ethan's mother, walked in. What's going on? She asked. She's telling me how to spend my money, Tessa said, instantly slipping into victim mode. Helen's eyes moved to Rachel, cool and polite. Rachel, maybe you should focus on resting and let us handle the financial matters. Rachel wanted to laugh at the irony. If only they knew. Every brick of this house, every stick of furniture, even the car in the garage had been bought with her money. But instead, she forced a smile. Of course, she said, and walked upstairs, each step heavier than the last. In the bedroom, Rachel sat on the edge of the bed, fingers clasped tightly together. Her mind was a storm of anger, disbelief, and sadness. She thought about calling Ethan, but decided against it. She still wanted to shield him from seeing the worst in his sister and mother. That night, she stayed silent, lying next to him in bed, listening to the hum of the air conditioner. But inside, something had shifted. Until now, she had told herself patience was worth the peace. But being called a gold digger in her own home was a line she could not unhear. There was a difference between keeping the peace and allowing yourself to be disrespected. This was the first crack in the dam. The next morning seemed calm. Ethan left early for a meeting, kissing her forehead before heading out. Rachel enjoyed a quiet moment in bed, her hand tracing circles over her belly. By mid-morning, she was folding laundry when Tessa came into the living room, dressed for brunch, designer bags swinging from her arm. You need to get your things and leave, Tessa said flatly. Rachel blinked. What? This is my brother's house, and you're not welcome anymore. Rachel set down the towel. Tessa, I don't know what your problem is. My problem, Tessa cut in, is that you've been living here like you own the place. You're nothing but a gold digger, and I'm not going to let you drain him dry. Rachel stared at her, momentarily stunned. The absurdity of being thrown out of her own house almost made her laugh. But Tessa's expression was cold, her posture aggressive. If you don't leave now, things will get ugly, she added, stepping closer. Rachel's gaze flicked to her baby bump. Don't you dare touch me, Rachel warned, her voice low and steady. Tessa smirked. Maybe that's what you need, someone to knock some sense into you. The air in the room went icy. Rachel could feel her pulse in her ears. She was seconds away from lashing out, but something in her stopped. She realized she had two choices: stay and let Tessa provoke her into a scene, or leave on her own terms and plan something far more satisfying. "Fine," Rachel said, her tone surprisingly calm. "If you want me gone, I'll go." She turned and walked upstairs, ignoring Tessa's smug grin. She packed only essentials into a small bag and ordered a car to a downtown hotel. As she closed the front door behind her, Tessa stood in the hallway with arms folded like she had just won a war. At the hotel, Rachel sat on the bed, looking out at the city skyline. Her phone rang, Ethan's name flashing on the screen. "Rachel, where are you?" he asked, his voice urgent. "I just got home, and Tessa said you left." "What happened?" "Ask your sister," Rachel replied evenly. "I just need some space right now." Her voice cracked slightly, but she hung up before he could push further. She stared at her laptop on the desk. Inside a folder labeled assets were documents she had kept private for years: the deed to the house, proof of full payment, bank statements, and investments. She had kept them separate not out of mistrust, but to protect her independence. Now those papers weren't just records. They were ammunition. Rachel picked up the phone and called her lawyer. "Mr. Carter, I need you to arrange a property meeting at my house tomorrow afternoon. I'll explain in person." He didn't ask questions. He knew her well enough to understand she meant business. A few hours later, Ethan called again. "Where are you exactly?" he asked. "At the Marriott," she said. "Room 314. 20 minutes later, he was there, still in his work suit, his tie loosened. The moment he walked in, he pulled her into his arms. "Tell me what happened," he said. Rachel told him everything: how Tessa had ordered her to leave, how she claimed the house was his, and therefore hers to control. Ethan's face darkened, his voice low and dangerous. "She did what?" he muttered. He sat beside her and took her hands. "You're coming home tomorrow, and she's going to regret this." That night, Rachel's mind worked like clockwork. She had tolerated Tessa's arrogance for months, but eviction was a new level. If Tessa wanted to throw her out, she would soon learn what a real eviction looked like: one signed, sealed, and backed by law. The next morning, Rachel woke early, leaving Ethan asleep. At the desk, she opened the folder again. Property deed in her name. Mortgage paid off years before she even met Ethan. Utilities in her name. It wasn't just their home, it was hers. And now, she intended to remind everyone of that fact. By 9 o'clock, Ethan was awake and ready to head home, but Rachel stopped him. "Wait for my call before you talk to her," she said. "Why?" he asked, puzzled. "Because we're doing this my way," she replied, sliding her laptop into its case. Their first stop was Mr. Carter's office. He had handled the purchase of the house years earlier and greeted Rachel like an old friend. She explained the situation, and he listened with a slow, deliberate smile. "This," he said, "is going to be very satisfying." Together, they drafted a formal notice to vacate, giving Tessa exactly 48 hours to remove herself and her belongings. The document was airtight, signed, stamped, and accompanied by proof of ownership. Mr. Carter even insisted on adding, "Trespassing beyond this date will result in legal action." By noon, Rachel and Ethan were parked across the street from their house. From the open living room window, they could hear Tessa's voice, loud, confident. "Oh, please. I run this place. Rachel's just a gold digger. Ethan will throw her out soon anyway." Ethan's jaw clenched so tight, she could see the muscle twitch. She placed a calming hand on his arm. "Not yet," she whispered. They walked up the driveway together, the eviction notice in Rachel's hand. Inside, Tessa lounged on the couch, sipping iced coffee. "Oh, look who's back," she said with a smirk. "Did the hotel run out of rooms?" Rachel set the envelope on the coffee table. "Read it," she said simply. Tessa rolled her eyes, but tore it open. Her smirk faded as her eyes scanned the page. She looked up at Rachel, then Ethan. "What is this?" "It's a notice from the owner of this house," Rachel said calmly. "That would be me. You have 48 hours to leave." Ethan crossed his arms, his presence solid beside her. She's serious, Tessa. Start packing. For a moment, Tessa just stared, her mouth opening and closing. Wait, this is your house? Not Ethan's? Correct, Rachel replied. Every brick, every tile, every piece of furniture, paid for before I even knew your brother. Color drained from Tessa's face. I didn't know. That much is obvious, Rachel said. Now you do. Tessa turned to Ethan, her voice almost pleading. You're not really going to let her do this, are you? Ethan didn't hesitate. You disrespected my wife, insulted her, and threw her out of her own home while she's carrying my child. You're lucky all she's asking is for you to leave. Tessa's lips trembled. But where am I supposed to go? Rachel shrugged lightly. Not my problem, remember? They left her sitting there, staring down at the notice like it might bite her. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about justice, clear, undeniable, and legally binding. And Rachel still had one more surprise planned before the 48 hours were up. The next 2 days were, for Rachel, the most satisfying 48 hours she could remember. She and Ethan stayed in the house, moving back into their bedroom like nothing had happened. This time, Rachel walked through the halls with her head high, no longer feeling like a guest in her own home. Tessa, on the other hand, was a shadow of her former self. Gone was the smirk, the loud phone calls, the expensive deliveries. She spoke only in hushed tones, whispering into her phone, likely begging friends for a place to stay. The shopping bags she once flaunted now sat in a heap by the door. On the second evening, just hours before her deadline, Tessa knocked softly on their bedroom door. Ethan was inside with Rachel, folding tiny baby clothes they'd bought weeks earlier. Rachel opened the door to find Tessa standing there, eyes red and puffy. Rachel, I'm sorry, Tessa said quietly. Rachel raised a brow. Sorry for what exactly? I didn't know. I thought you were just here for Ethan's money. I wanted to protect him. I didn't mean to. Throw me out in the middle of my pregnancy? Rachel interrupted, her voice calm but sharp. Tessa looked at the floor. I didn't think you owned the house. Or had more money than Ethan. Rachel tilted her head. Or that I could take care of myself without either of you? Tessa didn't answer, which was all the confirmation Rachel needed. Ethan stepped forward. Tessa, if you cared about me, you would have respected my wife. Instead, you made her life miserable. I stood by her before I knew any of this, and I'll keep standing by her. His voice carried a finality that left no room for argument. Please, Rachel. Tessa tried again, her voice trembling. Can I stay? Just until I figure things out. Rachel shook her head slowly. No, Tessa. Actions have consequences, and this is yours. Tessa's eyes filled again, but Rachel turned away before they could reach her heart. Tessa had made her cry more times than she could count. She could live with a few tears herself. An hour later, Ethan carried Tessa's last suitcase to the porch. She shuffled out, dragging her handbag, looking back like she still couldn't believe she was leaving. Helen had been calling Ethan all day, demanding he control his wife, but he sent one text that made Rachel's heart swell. Rachel is my wife. She's family. You and Tessa crossed the line. Don't call me until you're ready to apologize to her. When the door shut behind Tessa, the house felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted from every room. That night, curled up on the couch, Rachel decided it was time for full honesty with Ethan. She opened her laptop and pulled up her financial portfolio. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the pages, stocks, properties, investments, all in her name. Rachel, you're a millionaire, Ethan breathed, his voice somewhere between awe and disbelief. Rachel smiled softly. Correction, we're millionaires. And now that you know, we can build even more together. Ethan shook his head with a quiet laugh, pulling her into his arms. I loved you before I knew any of this, but now I'm just in awe of you. His hand rested protectively on her baby bump. They sat there for a while in comfortable silence, both processing the events of the past few days. Without Tessa's chaos, the house felt like a sanctuary again, a place they could finally focus on the life they were building. For Rachel, It wasn't just about money.
It was about respect.
She had kept her wealth quiet not because she was hiding it, but because she believed relationships should be built on love, not dollar signs. But when someone crossed the line, especially family, she had every right to stand her ground. The following morning, Rachel walked through the house, noting how much calmer it felt. No loud phone calls echoing down the hall, no mess in the kitchen, no luxury shopping bags piled in the living room. For the first time in months, she felt peace settle over her like a warm blanket. Later that afternoon, Ethan found her in the nursery, arranging baby clothes. "I was thinking," he said, leaning against the doorframe, "maybe we should take a trip after the baby's born. Somewhere quiet. Just us." Rachel smiled. "I'd like that." Meanwhile, Tessa was getting a taste of reality. Friends weren't as quick to offer a couch as she'd hoped. Her reputation for entitlement had caught up with her, and she found herself moving from place to place, learning the hard way that burning bridges often leaves you stranded. Helen called again a few days later, this time with a softer tone. She wanted to talk things through, but Rachel politely declined to meet without a genuine apology. Ethan backed her without hesitation. "Until they respect you," he told her, "they don't get access to us or our child." Rachel knew this was more than just a personal victory. It was a turning point in her marriage. Ethan had seen her strength, her independence, and he stood beside her every step of the way. It made her love him even more. As the days passed, Rachel returned to her routine, running her businesses, preparing for the baby, and enjoying the simple pleasure of a drama-free home. Every now and then, she'd catch herself smiling, thinking about the look on Tessa's face when she realized whose name was on the deed. If there was one lesson Rachel carried from the entire ordeal, it was this: never mistake kindness for weakness. She could be patient, she could be generous, but she would never allow anyone, family or not, to disrespect her again. One evening, about a week later, Rachel and Ethan sat on the back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Ethan reached for her hand. "You know," he said, "I think Tessa will think twice before crossing you again." Rachel chuckled softly. "I don't need her to fear me, Ethan. I just need her to respect me."
He squeezed her hand.
"You've earned that. And so much more." The baby kicked, as if in agreement, and Rachel rested her free hand on her belly. In that moment, she felt grounded, not just as a wife or a soon-to-be mother, but as a woman who had fought for her place and kept her dignity intact. The following weekend, Rachel received a short text from Helen. "I'm sorry. I misjudged you. It wasn't much, but it was a start." Rachel replied politely, thanking her, but she wasn't rushing to rebuild trust. Some wounds needed time before they could heal. Meanwhile, Tessa had moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. She was quiet on social media now, no longer flaunting expensive purchases or extravagant brunches. Rachel suspected she'd learned that not every lifestyle could be funded by someone else's generosity. As the due date approached, Rachel poured her energy into preparing for the baby's arrival. Ethan was more involved than ever, painting the nursery walls, assembling the crib, and making late-night runs for the cravings she pretended weren't urgent. The bond between them felt stronger than ever. One night, while tucking away baby blankets, Rachel thought back to the moment she had walked out of the house with her small bag. It had felt like defeat then, but now she saw it for what it truly was, a strategic retreat that led to a decisive victory. She realized that walking away doesn't always mean giving up. Sometimes, it's the smartest way to regain control. If she had stayed and fought with Tessa that day, the situation could have spiraled into something messy, even dangerous for the baby. But leaving had allowed her to come back on her own terms. Ethan noticed her quiet reflection and came to stand beside her. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked. Rachel smiled. "Just thinking how far we've come, and how important it is to protect our peace." He kissed her forehead. "We'll keep it that way. Always." The night before they welcomed their child into the world, Rachel sat by the window, feeling the gentle weight of the life inside her. She thought of the battles fought, the bridges burned, and the lessons learned. Some people would call it revenge. She called it reclaiming her power. And so, with her husband by her side and their future wide open, Rachel closed that chapter for good. She knew one thing with absolute certainty. When someone tries to write you out of your own story, you don't just take the pen back. You write a better ending.